When Missing Turns to Murder is an absolutely fantastic true crime series. I found this to be very addictive and absolutely brilliant to watch. When I watch a new crime series, because I've watched a lot of them, the one thing I'm looking for, really, apart from a good storytelling, is will this be cases that I'm not familiar with? And I'm really pleased to say that well, I think maybe 40% of the cases I'd heard of before, which is not bad going. So there's some kind of fresh meat in here if you're a seasoned true crime fan, and that's something that I found to be really thrilling. The premise for this is pretty straightforward. It looks at cases where individuals went missing and they were treated as missing persons before either a body was found or there was a suspect who kind of was suspected of murder. And the way in which these stories are told are pretty straightforward. We find out first of all how they were reported missing, who reported them missing, who maybe doesn't seem concerned that they're missing, and then of course when the suspicions that this person may have been murdered or abducted at least, when that kicks in, it gets pretty thrilling but also kind of chilling. So from an enjoyment perspective, it's got everything there. We have interviews with family and friends and loved ones. We have photos of the victims edited in. We have, where possible, footage of the locations, the crime scenes. There's one particular one that I loved. Loved isn't the right word, but I found it particularly interesting. We got to see footage that they used in the court case where they were able to reconstruct in 3D digital imaging the inside of the victim's house, so they could show that to the jury. And I thought that was pretty great. I'd never seen that done before. I'd never seen that explained in a true crime series, and I just found that to be a really interesting development in technology. Some of these cases are older than the others. Some of them, I think 2015 was the most recent one. This series aired in 2019, and actually the case from 2015 I will talk a little bit about in a moment, but that one boiled my blood the most for several reasons. Well, that one and another one. I will talk a little bit about some of the cases to give you a flavour of the kind of things you can expect, but what I will say is the diversity is brilliant. There are a lot of cases in this that are much older. Some of them are more recent. Some of them are stranger abductions that turn into murder. Some of them are familial crimes. They're all British, to the best of my recollection, and it starts off with the case of Helen McCourt, a 22-year-old woman who went missing on her way home from work. And that's a pretty standard case to start off with. Some of these are a bit more complicated. Eases us in quite nicely. Lorraine Benson, kind of a similar case, and then we get to Natalie Hemming. What I also like as well is that these episodes are titled after the victim. Some true crime series will title them after the murderer or the suspect, and I prefer it when they're titled after the victim because they're the ones whose names need to be immortalised, not the criminals. Natalie Hemming, I could talk about this one for quite a while because it really annoyed me. This is the second case that bugged me a lot because of just how frustrating it was. She was a mother of 3 young children, I believe, and I won't say what happened, but I will say she was in a very tense relationship with her partner, and the family home was a very unhappy place. And this particular episode just, it's one of those things where it shouldn't have happened. It didn't need to happen. Obviously none of them needed to happen, but it was pretty difficult to watch, but for all of the right reasons. Wesley Neailey is one that I'd heard of. This is about an 11-year-old boy in the 90s who went missing. I won't say any more about that. I believe he is the only child in this series, but I'd heard of his case before. It's quite a popular one. You may have come across it. Carole Packman. Carole Packman, there's actually a 3 or 4 part series, I think it's part of the Investigator series, that details this case, obviously over the course of 3 or 4 episodes. I was already well aware of this case. Needless to say, this episode doesn't go into too much detail. It's about a mother who left the family home, including her daughter, a 16-year-old daughter, in the 1980s, but under multiple suspicious circumstances. It's a very complex case. I think the episode did well to pack it into this kind of one 45-minute, hour-long episode. It's a really good foundation for getting to know what this is about. If you enjoyed that episode, definitely go and watch the episodes. I'm sure it's part of the Investigator series. I have reviewed it either way. And I think you'll get a lot out of that. It is, really, really fascinating. Then we have Danielle Jones, who was 15 actually, so we do have technically another child. And then we have one, Shafilea Ahmed, which is a case that I can't remember if I was aware of this case or if it's very familiar to another one, but I will say this one's definitely worth a watch as well and very eye-opening. The case of Jayden Parkinson. This one kind of hits home because I feel like I was roughly the same age as her at the same time. She was 15 years old and dating I believe, slightly older boy who was very controlling, very manipulative. This is a brilliant episode to watch if you're into character analysis and forensic psychology. This one is really fascinating. But this is another one that absolutely didn't need to happen. There could have been a lot of intervention. It's just one of those things where the victim had their own mind and they could do what they wanted, and unfortunately no amount of outside help was going to stop this from happening. Very, very hard case to watch. The mother is so emotional and you really feel the pain she's gone through. And it is difficult to watch, but it's edited together very well, very moving, very informative, and as I said, it is really interesting from a forensic psychology perspective. Evelyn Lund was a particularly interesting one. I believe she may be the eldest individual here. And this one really annoyed me because, well, on the one hand, I kind of felt like she was following her new husband around a bit too easily. For a woman of her age and experience, you'd expect them to know, some warning signs and not to marry somebody you've just met, move to a different country. It's a very complicated situation, but at the same time, it just shows how manipulative Robert Lund was. And this one, the forensics are particularly interesting, surrounding a vehicle. I won't say any more than that, but we get some great shots of the vehicle as it was found and information about what would happen to the engine if it was on, rather than if it was off. I can't say any more than that, but I learned some things. And the last episode is the one that really wound me up for two main reasons. This is the case of Janet Müller. She and her twin sister, they're Germans, they came over from Germany to study in the UK. Janet was studying at Brighton University, and for some reason, over time, she began to display symptoms of serious mental illness, completely being a totally different individual, risking her own safety. The episode never really looked at why that was or what triggered it, which is a shame because I think that's something that would have been really interesting and also quite important if anybody watching it has a loved one with a similar condition. But what happened? Okay, so I'm nearly finished discussing this show, so I will not give any spoilers for the moment. I will just say, if you love true crime, you will love this series. You will devour it very quickly, and I promise you will adore it. It's very well researched, very well edited, it's emotive, it's informative. Some of the cases I'd heard of, some of them were fresh to me, so it's got a really good balance of victims, of victimology, and both familial and stranger crimes as well. And the Janet Müller one, ending with that one, just annoying, frustrating, emotional, moving. It's got everything. So, spoiler from now, I'm about to explain what happened with Janet Müller. Basically, she was committed to this mental health clinic, and she escaped. She was taken back, and she escaped again, twice in the same day. And people say that this bugged me because I have a very strong hatred of the mental health facilities in the UK that are run by the NHS. I don't care how good the NHS is at accommodating people with physical illnesses. They are appalling at helping people with mental health conditions. And the fact that she was able to escape twice from the same premises in the same day just kind of reinforces that. And the episode actually mentioned that this particular mental health clinic had escapees before, and they hadn't done anything to rectify that. So from a personal perspective, it's something that's a personal bugbear, if you like. That really wound me up. But then it gets worse. However many hours later, Janet is found in the boot of a car that has been set on fire. Why? How? There are no answers to this question. The culprit or alleged culprit will not answer. He will not say anything at all. But I really need to know. It's one of those cases where I really need answers, and we don't know how she got into the back of this car. I don't know how they kind of lost her on CCTV after a certain point, but these things do happen. They do happen. And mostly if the car's taking B roads. And did she know this individual? If I were to theorize, and there's no basis for this other than what I think might have happened, is that this guy was driving around. He's a suspected drug dealer, and he hit Janet accidentally with his car. She was obviously a danger to herself. It wouldn't have been unheard of for her to be wandering in the middle of the roads, in the middle of the night, in the pitch black. The car could have hit her, and the best way to not be done for manslaughter, to be honest, I feel like he would have got away with it. But if he did call the police and say, hey, I've just hit somebody, they're going to investigate and find out that he's also dealing drugs. So the best thing in his mind would be to put her in the boot of the car, set the car on fire. Nobody's going to ever find out, apparently. That's just my theory. There's no real basis for that other than that seems to be the most logical thing. There's no real way for him to have known her because, I don't believe she had a mobile phone on her. She wouldn't have been able to have arranged to meet up with somebody. And she'd been wandering around for hours beforehand. He could have seen her, abducted her, hurt her, killed her. But in a way, I feel like the accidental hit and not run would have been the least traumatic experience. Because it would have been quick. I don't know. I assume we'll never get answers, and my heart goes out to the family who do not have these answers. It's a very powerful episode. A fantastic way to end the series. If you're a true crime fan, When Missing Turns to Murder is one you definitely need to check out. I promise you will absolutely adore it.